Two. Hello, everybody out there on internet land. My name is Jared Mendoza, here with our special guest for today, Grant Fox. We're here. We're doing the We Talk Politics show. Corey couldn't be with us today. He's a little preoccupied, but no worries. We got another good political commentator with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Grant.
Well, I used to make YouTube videos, and I still do, but you take someone from one side where I never took a political stance. I always had my opinion, but I always kind of left it out. I always made videos kind of neutral, just trying to make people laugh and stuff like that. But now I've been seeing that the political climate has gotten so bad, and I have all this knowledge on things like the Founding Fathers. I have my own personal opinions, and I try to think of myself as a pretty logical person. Because apparently, common sense isn't as common anymore. So I was like, you know what? I have all this passion for things like the Founding Fathers and American history and what the betterment of this country should be. Why don't I start making some videos about that? So I did, and so maybe a year or two later, here I am. I've been shadow banned on YouTube for pretty much releasing my opinion, and I'm not even heavily conservative or anything. But 1 to 2 years later, I became an ambassador for Turning Point, which is a pretty good organization. I have to say so myself. Started making some more videos on TikTok, and that's boomed in like 3 months. I've already hit like 80K, and I just really find a passion in trying to convey a different perspective that people may have never thought of before. So there you go. Someone who's completely or tried to be not political. Now I'm full in. So
I mean, hey, it happens sometimes. Sometimes you just got to start talking about some.
Yep.
Especially now, if there was ever a time to really start having genuine conversations about the political world right now, it'd be right about now.
Yeah, and, how like politically divided we are now, or how the media's really made people that divided right now is really key and really critical to make people understand that you can still give your perspective or your opinion without offending someone else. It's not a personal attack. It's, hey, here's my argument. Let me hear yours. It's two arguments instead of two people versus another person.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do here. And just we're just going to do some quick headlines here. This is first thing on CNN that I see on the website right now is they are focusing on still the covering the protests that have been going on around the country as a result of the death of George Floyd.
Yep.
I believe it was just about 2 weeks ago now. And the protests that sparked, it seems to be sparking a good size movement of people, of protests against police brutality and against the systemic racism that has run rampant in some police departments. And I just want to get your reaction to that, your reaction to the situation, something good that you see, and maybe something not so good that you see around what's going on right now.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to this, but I will say this. I wouldn't say it has driven or hasn't gathered a pretty sized crowd. That honestly would be an understatement. I mean, people all over the world have been reacting to this, and for a good reason. They see from what they see is oppression, and they want to fight against it. I mean, that's the most patriotic thing I can think of. When we fought from Britain, we were fighting against oppression. We wanted to fight it. But that being said, and this is not to discredit Black Lives Matter or anything like that, because I've had to tell people numerous times, okay, yeah, I'm for Black Lives Matter. It's kind of foolish to not want to support a group who's being oppressed. Okay, if it was white people, if we switched the roles around, if it was white people that were slaves for hundreds of years, which actually is true, but if we blow it out of proportion to the way that the media has now, and white people have this identity of like, oh, we're being oppressed, well, then I think other people would want to support us too. That being said, a lot of this stuff, with George Floyd, and rest his soul. I mean, the whole thing should never happen in the first place. But the thing is, if we're going to make him the icon for Black Lives Matter, we've got to do a much better job, because this guy was far. I mean, people don't even understand how guilty this guy really was. It goes even beyond him resisting arrest. I mean, this guy was like a 5-time convicted felon. He held a gun to a pregnant lady's belly. I mean, it goes even farther than that. I mean, he was high on fentanyl when they were trying to arrest him. He has drug charges even out the wazoo. And even if we totally disregard that, even if we just solely look at what happened during the incident, yeah, the cop should have never put his knee on his neck. I don't think there's anyone that's supporting the cop. Okay,
right.
And no police department ever anywhere in the United States teaches that you need to put the knee on the neck. Okay, in fact, it's actually counterintuitive because that's how you get lawsuits and kill people. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's that. But it's interesting because I'm going to make a video on this, and I have all sorts of documentation and sources and all that sort of stuff I've already looked into. That it was 99% of this entire thing, this entire shit show that happened with George Floyd, which again, it was really sad. It shouldn't have happened. But 99% of this entire thing was George Floyd's fault. He was using counterfeit bills. He was resisting arrest. And again, everyone in the car, got out and they were fine. They didn't give police any problems. And people have been making out to be this entire white cop versus unarmed black guy, which is true. It's true. It's not true because you look at the people in the car were also black. So he obviously wasn't targeting them for being black. They were trying to get him out of the car. He was resisting. He was being really fidgety, as I saw in the what do you call this? It wasn't
the security cam footage.
Well, I mean, I watched the camera footage, but it was also like the testimony of the cops, and they had the body cam footage too. And I was overlooking the body cam footage, but they severely redacted a lot of it. So I'm just going off what the transcript says of what the cops said and what everyone else said. I mean, he said he wasn't going into the car willingly. I mean, the guy's like 6 something and he weighs like 200 pounds and he was high on a drug. I mean, so again, I'm all for the Black Lives Matter thing, but we've got to choose a better person than this. If there was actual people to choose, like Eric Garner, that was a perfect example of brutality. Like, yeah, he was resisting arrest, but there was no need for the chokehold. And I hope that's the right person. I'm not, getting them mixed up.
Yeah, it was Eric Garner in New York for the I think of the cigarette situation,
yeah.
Right?
And I will say this: there's a lot of people that are showing support and they want to, fight racism and all this stuff, and that's fine. I'm all for that. But also, don't be so blind to being open to seeing, maybe we're being lied to, maybe there's some other facts going on here, and there's also some other other sources in the video that I'm making right now listing it. We're actually not being told the entire truth. Like, blacks are not just being hunted by these by these white cops. In fact, it's the complete other way around. And the FBI homicide table and all these different things show that that's not true. And so I've been doing armed security down in Baltimore this entire time. I even did it during the riots down in Baltimore. I forget why they were rioting. Who was the one in Baltimore that they were doing?
It was 2015. The situation with Freddie Gray, who also suffered injuries in police custody, and by the time they got to the station,
that was the one that was in the back of the van. So I was there. I was there in Baltimore protecting businesses there too. I mean, I was strapped with an AR, and we had to make sure that these businesses didn't get looted, and because that was crazy. But I think Baltimore learned from last time to not destroy your own businesses.
I think it's definitely been one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of these places, especially when it started getting more, how do I put this, more out of control in Minneapolis and St. Paul, in LA, Austin,
right,
and a bunch of different, but Miami, even a little bit in DC. The protests that have been in Baltimore, as far as I've seen, have been what a peaceful protest, where they keep constant communication with all parties involved, including law enforcement, to let them know, all right, this is the route we're going to go. This is, the time we're going to be here. This is how many people we're expecting. But, there could be a lot more because of the nature of how these protests grow sometimes. Yeah. But we're going this way, and that way, and including most of the time, especially now this last week, as opposed to the previous week, I've seen a lot more people in these protests, whether it be organizers or just people who show up, trying to maintain as much peace as possible and, maintaining as much control over the situation as possible, because
they should be.
Right. And I think they saw that as a situation where even if it's a small group of people who are separated, who just want to go and cause trouble and stir up a little bit of chaos, which, people do take advantage of these situations to do so.
Right.
They notice that they're going to associate this person who's throwing a brick at police, this person who's lighting things on fire, or this person who's looting a store with this movement, and that's the last thing we want. So we're going to make sure that's as suppressed as possible. We're only here to protest, which they have a right to, not to the destruction of other property and the cause of danger of other people around them and of the police officers in front of them.
Right. And there's two different avenues I want to go over with that. One is the right to be able to peacefully protest. That is literally the First Amendment, which I actually have pulled up here. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. So we have freedom of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, so freedom of the press, the right of people to peacefully assemble. Now, you have to look at that and you have to really kind of dissect that. What that means is, yes, you have the right to peacefully assemble. What happens when it's no longer peaceful? It's no longer a protest, is it? You have what's happening in Minneapolis. You have what's happening in, different parts of all over the country where they're just rioting and looting.
Los Angeles, New York,
Yeah.
Seattle.
And I think the distinction here is that one is Black Lives Matter, one is not. Black Lives Matter, their whole purpose is to say, yes, everyone is equal. Yes, all lives matter. However, we're focusing on this group of people right now, which I get. I get that whole theory.
Right.
And I agree with it. But once you have people start doing what you just said, they're no longer Black Lives Matter anymore. They're an anarchy group. There's other people outside that are no longer associated with Black Lives Matter and causing problems. And so now, therefore, they no longer have the right to peacefully assemble because they're not peacefully assembling anymore. And the other thing is, my father and I were driving to Gaithersburg in Maryland, and we got caught up in a protest. And I forget what highway it was, but we were pretty close to Gaithersburg, and we got stuck. There was people all over in the highway blocking our way. And so it begged the question. I was like, you know what? They have the right to peacefully assemble wherever their tax dollars go for it, except for, of course, the White House and a whole other list of exceptions where they should have the right to go because their taxpayers' money is going towards those public lands. And we're sitting there in the car, and we're noticing they're getting really, really close to our car and a whole bunch of other cars. In fact, some people jumped up on some other person's car and started to try to destroy it. And I'm like, you know what? If we're completely stuck right now, if we wanted to back out or get out, we can't because there's a median in the middle of the road. We cannot drive over the median. And there's other cars kind of like we're at bottleneck. So all the cars were stuck. If they decided to take us all or jump inside the car and try to hurt us, there's nothing we could have done. And so that begs the question, when does your right trample the right of other right? When does your rights trample the rights of other people? And if your rights trample the rights of other people, that's no longer a right. If you have the right to peacefully assemble and you're peacefully assembling on the highway, infringing on other people's rights to transportation or to get wherever they need to go, maybe they lose their job because they're late to work, that's no longer your right. You need to be able to, you cannot infringe on other people's rights.
Right, and that's why I said I think the most important thing with a lot of these, the more recent protests they've been in constant communication with law enforcement, because the law enforcement will tell them, hey, look, maybe the interstate is not a good idea for you guys to start marching over. We have, first of all, it's illegal.
Yeah, I'm frankly, I'm surprised more people have not gotten in trouble with this. I don't know why more police officers have not started enforcing, just get people off the streets, go on the sidewalks, go occupy somewhere else. I mean, but you can't just do it on the road, no matter what you're fighting for.
Right, exactly. And if they do organize it correctly and say, all right, so we've organized with police and we say, we're going to stay in this road, we're going to be around you. And I've seen people I saw someone complaining about the fact that they saw snipers over their head. And they thought that was like a fear-mongering thing. Corey pointed this out last week. I don't know if he said it on air when we were off air, but I think he pointed out the fact that police sniper is not there for you.
Yeah.
It is not there for, to scare. It's there to protect you. They're there securing the area for you to be able to protest. Because there are people who have a bad mindset and will say, I want to go get my name in the news. And I'm going to take my gun and I'm going to go do this, and that, and shoot however many people I can get before they get
a car and run over as many people as you can.
Absolutely. Exactly. So their job is to protect you and your rights to protest that you have organized with them. That's why they're there. They're working with you most of the time. You can't look at everybody, every single cop, and you cannot make a generalization about an entire group of people. That's how you get to racism, and that's how you get to people saying, you got to defund every single police department in the country. You have to, get rid of them and abolish them and all of that. And, it doesn't work to go to the extremes. And like I said, the extreme seems to be a part of the political climate that we live in currently, unfortunately. So we have to be able to think critically and say, okay, look, we get that this is happening and we have a right to protest peacefully, as you said, and we've organized it this way, and we're trying to be as peaceful as we can. And we don't want anybody to undercut it by causing any trouble or stirring up any chaos around us. So, I think the best thing to do is and I've always said the best thing to do is to communicate with others around you. Say, hey, look, don't do this. And if you see someone doing that, stop them. If you communicate with the police, all right, they'll let you say, all right, we'll go this and that street. Please follow the march and we'll let you there and we'll actually protect you because this is your constitutional right and we are there to protect you.
Right.
So you just have to think through. You can't just get hooked on a phrase or get hooked on a belief without thinking it all the way through.
Yeah. The other thing I want to kind of talk about too is the fact that I was talking about peaceful protests too, and how you peacefully protest is important as well. I mean, if you give police as much heads up as you can, they can block off certain roads, they can divert traffic, so people aren't getting pissed off, stuck in traffic. I'm going to talk about the armed protest that I was in Virginia, but before I do that, when I was stuck in the one in Gaithersburg, and they hopped up on some dude's car. Yeah, I mean, there's people all around us of all colors. I mean, black, Hispanic. I mean, you name it. I mean, Asians as well, and they're all in the cars. And the majority of the protesters, as kind of statistically as it goes, the most active tend to be really young. Whether they're kids or late 20s, whatever. Yeah, teenagers. Right. They tend to be the most active or the most engaged in this sort of stuff, where they're actually wanting to take physical action. And so we're there, and the majority of them are kids. And I'm looking around, and everyone in the car is like an adult, and there's frankly there was like maybe half blacks and then everyone else maybe Asians and whites, and they were all pissed. I mean, if they're really trying to go for Black Lives Matter and and protest, don't piss people off. You need to find a way to engage them as well and say, hey, instead of blocking your way to go to work, I'm going to do it on the sidewalk and see us all holding signs to see the sheer number of us or something else. But if you get on their bad side, they're not going to want to support that. And this is what we did with the one in Virginia, the tyrant and the governor in Virginia,
Ralph Northam.
Yeah, pretty much. He took it upon himself and some members of Congress to ban some firearms in the entire state. I mean, the entire state of Virginia, except for one or two counties, were against it. And so the majority of Virginians showed up for this rally. Everyone was armed. I was armed. I mean, all I had to do was flip the safety and we'd be ready. But the thing is, the way we organized it was, one, it was peaceful. They had time to divert traffic. Two, when we were there, not a single shot was fired. No one was hurt. No, there was no fist fights. There was, I think, one arrest, and it wasn't even someone that was carrying a gun. It was someone outside of the protest. And third, the thing that no one even talked about was there were so many diverse people there. I mean, I took pictures, but my phone got destroyed in the kayak. I think I have some on Instagram.
Right. Yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of black people carrying AR-15s. There was an Asian lady holding up the sign saying, "Do I look like a white supremacist to you?" And the other thing was, after the protest, everyone was there cleaning up the street. I mean, there were stickers that had like a sticker that said like "Gun Saves Lives," and they were picking them up off the street. I mean, with this, I saw the aftermath after the protest. People were just littered all over the ground. I mean, there was signs left over. There was water bottles. I mean, backpacks, you name it. They just completely destroyed the place. So if you're really trying to make a difference, that's not the way you do it.
Right. Yeah. And I do think that it's also important. You're a very, very strong advocate for the Second Amendment, as am I. I do believe that you have a constitutional right to bear arms.
This is the perfect time for it. And again, Black Lives Matter, if they should be using the Second Amendment to their advantage. If they really think that they're being oppressed, they should do armed protests. Why not? That's what the Black Panthers did.
Right. And and I think it's I think they're going for more, as far as I can tell, a more of an economic approach, which could also work if you organize everything correctly. I think that is also a very good, because this is one thing capitalism loves, it's the money. So if you say, all right, well, I think as a community and as supporters of this community and movement, I think we're going to boycott this and that, this and that business for whatever reason. Let's say, okay, like one of the biggest companies I've seen make a positive reaction to a business. I've seen the founders of Ben and Jerry's, making statements online about, that they see the problems that have been caused by, a system that they believe is broken, and that they're donating money to a bunch of awareness. I think that's one of the best things that people are doing with their money, is they're donating to awareness programs so that people can learn the history of maybe something they don't realize in front of. And I think, being educated is one of the most important things in the world. If you look at revolutions around the world, it's always the students that are rising up, because they're the most educated and the ones who are learning about the history, learning about what rights they actually have, and being energetic enough to take the action to go forward and try to make a difference for themselves in their future.
I would say generally yes. However, I think a lot of us have been, I don't know whether this is intentional or not, but a lot of us don't even know what our majority of our rights are anymore. So I think the education system is kind of failing us in those sort of regards. We're learning about things such as Black Lives Matter, but no one even knows why the Declaration of Independence was even made. I mean, so you'd be surprised. I go around and ask people this stuff all the time, and no one knows. They don't know what their basic rights are. So yes, I would say generally, yeah, the most educated tend to be the younger generation growing up. But here, I wouldn't be so sure though.
Right, like you said, there isn't a lot of information. Not that there isn't a lot of information, but there isn't a lot of general knowledge about what's going on around them for people to make a well-rounded decision as to what they see as a solution.
Right.
I think this is a generation caught up on phrases. And I saw this, like I said earlier, I saw this so much in 2016, or the campaigns could have been summed up to, a few phrases. For President Trump, his phrases were, build the wall, lock her up, drain the swamp. For Secretary Clinton, it was, I'm with her,
Control, Alt, Delete.
Yeah,
and also,
you mean with a wipe,
Also, the one thing we didn't, no one's talking about now is Clinton just lost her trial, not her trial, but one of her cases that she now has to go provide information on all these emails that she deleted. But of course, no one heard about that.
Well, yeah, and it's another thing. I want to touch on, aside from everything else that's going on, we still have a pandemic going on. Around the world, and especially in our country. I will say, though, we seem to be on pace to being in second place. The one time we don't want to be number one as a country in terms of the number of cases and deaths is that I will say Brazil is doing horrendously bad right now. It's bad because I think we're taking it as numbers, but you really have to start putting names on everything that's everyone that's losing a life, because it is a life lost, every single one of those numbers and data points, and we're in a precarious situation as a world, not just in this country but as a world where a lot of people are losing family members and friends, and the economy is also tanking because of the measures that have been taken place and implemented to try to stifle the rate of infection, but also you also have to give and take. I understand that people have to open up their business. People have to open up their businesses and all that to try to survive and provide for their families, and it's hard, especially you're wearing an Ocean City shirt right now, but think about it, if Ocean City hadn't opened up this year at all, that would have been 70% of their yearly or their fiscal calendar gone because no one showed up to the things. And I get you have to be safe, and it's one of the most slippery slopes I've ever seen. Is yes, this is dangerous, and yes, this is something that has to be taken seriously, and you have to wipe everything down. You have to be safe about it. But I also have to survive and eat something. And,
I mean, this is a whole different discussion. Maybe we can talk about this another time, because we could literally go on for hours with this one. But I will say this: these protests are going to reveal something very interesting about the coronavirus. It's either going to be an entire flop and show that all of these tens of thousands of people gathered and there's been no spike, or it's going to show that this really was even as worse of an idea that we originally thought, to have these protests and not be 6 feet apart, not wearing a mask, and see a huge spike. So this literally will be the make or break. And I saw something kind of interesting. And with here in Maryland, New Jersey, California, New York City, and maybe one other state has been really, really anal about the whole wear the mask. And they've been really taking the coronavirus thing really to a whole different level. And pretty much the rest of the country has not. Even some places that have majority cities, like Florida, shut down their beaches for a while, but then they just opened back up. And there was a side-by-side comparison showing New York City and Florida, and they both had pretty similar population size. New York City was 19 million, Florida was 22, And it wasn't like they were just all spread out through Florida. There was highly populated areas like Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Orlando, you name it, and
Right.
and they were going over some of the stats. Now, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people weren't quarantined in Florida. They were going out doing everything that they could normally do, barbershop, go to the movies, and they had a very, very low exposure rate, and they had a lower case of coronavirus versus New York City, which everyone was quarantined. They couldn't get vitamin D from the sun. They couldn't go get a haircut. They couldn't go do A, B, and C. But they were having a huge time in New York City, and I get it. New York City is a little bit different. Everyone's shoulder to shoulder, pretty much there.
Right. You live on top of each other, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, Miami and Fort Lauderdale and all these other places, they're not exactly far away either.
Right.
So it just makes you really think. And I guess we'll really find out with this whole protest whether it's a spike or not.
One of the biggest things is, like I said, you got to start. You have to think critically about everything around you, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people take the first thing they hear as a fact about anything.
Yeah.
And most of the time, that's really nothing. You have to think critically. You have to think, and I'll say the same thing my pastor's been saying for about a few weeks now, because we haven't been open all the way. We've either been doing streaming, drive-in services / streaming, and now they're starting to open up the building to people. They're taking everybody's temperature. They're saying, keep your mask on when you're coming in and out, keep your distance. Where's hand sanitizer on the way in, hand sanitizer on the way out.
Right.
Using every other pew. I think it's being very well organized, and I appreciate the measures being taken place. But they're also gathering, and one of the biggest things is that it's part of my faith to let me expand a little bit on my belief in my Christianity.
Sure.
Is that this is, we believe, an essential service to us as a religious facility, and people are still entitled to their rights, and and we understand, and they understood at the moment when everything started really shutting down, and really everything in the state shut down like that. I mean, it was within a 24-hour span, all sports stopped, everything outdoor was canceled, the work was, half of them closed down, the other half had to have a certain amount of PPE. My mother works at a physical therapy office. The doctors have to have face shields, bibs, gloves. You got to be sanitized. You have to wear face masks. You got to put a desk in front of the, and you take the measures to take care of yourself and to keep everybody safe around you, your customers, and your workers. And I think the church has done a good job in doing that. But it is essential, and it is our First Amendment right to gather as a church and to practice our faith.
Yeah.
And and one of the things is that his point is that like he said, it's a right, and we want to be able to do it, and we're taking the necessary precautions. But it's and I know stores are making an effort, but he said if he always brings up Walmart, and it's a good point. If you go to Walmart right now, it's either people who are terrified, or it's packed, and people aren't maintaining social, or you're bumping into people or something, or people aren't being conscious about what they're doing and who's around them and how clean everything is. So it's I can understand his frustration about not being allowed to open, because technically they're not. But I'm pretty sure many of his colleagues, other pastors at other churches, other religious leaders have been open throughout the entire time. Others have opened up before they were expressly told to, but they've done their due diligence in trying to keep themselves as safe as possible, because his belief is that we are technically being safer than Walmart, and I believe that we are. And that's one thing he doesn't want infringed upon, is our ability to gather as a church, especially when other things are open that are clearly more risky than going to church.
And I'm trying to remember who said this. I think it was Benjamin Franklin. Oh, no, actually, it was Benjamin Franklin. And I'll paraphrase this. And this is, again, from a different quote, and it was kind of lost in translation, but it still applies for today. Those that would give up essential liberties for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. And essentially what he was trying to get at was, you have these rights for a reason. And someone who's trying to take these rights away, even if it's for your security or for your safety, you should, one, not give in to that, because first of all, those are your rights. Second, you need to be asking, why are they trying to do this? Even if it was for a good intention, even if it was for the coronavirus, and so make sure everyone doesn't drop like flies, which one is more important to you? Would you rather be stuck in your house the rest of your life, or would you rather have this right to be able to leave your house and have yourself risk it and have the right to be able to leave the house, or would you have to be stuck inside the house even if this wasn't all real? So I'm not saying the coronavirus isn't real. Okay, so that's not what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But what I am trying to say is that there's been all this testing on there, and there's so much misinformation, and there's so many different tests being done about this coronavirus. Oh, it's so contagious. Oh, it's no, it's fine. Oh, it's so lethal. Oh, it's not. And there's these two different sides, and there's people in the middle, and everyone's stuck. But the thing is, should we always side on the side of, oh, well, as far as safety, we should just forfeit our right just so that no one gets hurt? No, and we shouldn't. It's literally in the First Amendment for a reason. And I'm trying to figure out where I wrote this down. Oh, yeah. So this is not a trick question, but it's not something that people typically know. Let me see if you do. Do you know what the government's purpose is? And it's only one.
I can't give you a really good answer, but I can, if I remember correctly from rereading the American Creed, it's just of the people, by the people, for the people, and it's to serve the rights of the people and to.
That's exactly it. Right? It's just to protect rights. That's it. In fact, there was a Supreme Court case where it went from DeShaney versus Winnebago, and it was talking about the Supreme Court and what the police's role is to the people. And it turns out it was actually not to protect and serve; it's just to enforce laws. And went even deeper into saying, well, the government's whole purpose is to just protect rights. It's not there to protect you. Blah 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 blah. I mean, that's where the whole military comes into play. And so, like, oh, get rid of the military since that's what the Second Amendment was about. No. Well, yeah. What I'm getting at is, when it comes to the First Amendment, and you have the right to freely assemble, or even go to church, which it clearly says, Congress shall make no law infringing on church or religious freedom. The thing is, you have that right, and they can't prohibit you from going to church if they want. It's all about civil liberties, and that's what the Founding Fathers believed in. You have the right to do something. The government is there to advise you against it or give you advice on something else or whatever, but it's your ultimate role and your responsibility to go outside if you wish. That's why the things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, signed in 1990 by the 43rd president, prohibits different businesses from denying you access to, say, a service dog or something like along those lines. They still have to provide a service to you, but it'll be in a different way, shape, or form. That way, you can still go to church, but it's ultimately your risk if you want to go. You're exposing yourself. And then people have been trying to cast the argument like, oh, but by you going outside, you're putting other people's lives at risk. Well, no. Then why are they outside? They chose to leave the house. It's not one of those things. It's not going to go through your brick door. I mean, no, through your brick walls. If you decide to leave the house, you're putting yourself at risk. You have the right to leave.
Right, exactly. And if I just lost what I was about to say. Goodness.
That's okay.
Having ADD is a fun thing. It's fun. It's a fun time. But if I can,
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the reason I'm so skeptical is because government, if you can always count on government to do one thing, is to always grow and become corrupt. And that's not a pessimistic way of looking at it. It's just that's what power and money always does. You look at any government in any history, and even the ones that exist today, they will soon become even worse and worse and worse. That's how it always happens. Fall of Rome. I mean, you name it.
I mean, if I can make a comment on that specifically, I've stuck by this is that there's three again based on my faith and practice in Christianity. There's three institutions that God created and that have been established by Him directly. It's the family, the government, and the church. And somehow all three of them end up getting corrupted to an extent, not because of the way they were created, but because of man's involvement. I think the biggest way government and authority itself gets corrupted is just by man's greed and basically involving into what we now know as politics. Yeah. Politics is a dirty game, and that's the way a lot of people see it. It's a system, saying I only need this much support, I only need to do this and rub this person's back, and they'll rub me back. And it's a corrupted system because it's humanity. Humanity is never going to be never going to have a perfect society by itself, because everyone, no matter how much, especially these new age socialists and people who support socialism in this country are, I'll pay more taxes if it means I'll help someone else. You're going to complain about 3 months in. You're going to complain about that or 3 years in.
I
And
complain
even
about
if
it
you
right
might
now
not.
with how much money I'm getting out my paycheck.
Right, exactly.
God.
And that's the thing is, it's like, you make your money, and it's for you. And I understand that there have definitely been businessmen who have taken advantage of loopholes and disparities within laws, and sometimes go to a place that doesn't have exactly the same law, or you know tiptoe around the litigation part of it, or get
Right.
someone to do them a favor in Congress. You never know. I mean, that's why tax codes are so large and all that, because of all the underhand agreements that congressmen and senators have with companies and all that. And it's just, that's the way humanity is. If you give someone more money, they're probably going to do something good for you. I take this as a prime example. I remember the Keystone XL pipeline situation in the Dakotas, and I remember there was a big protest against it, and especially with the Native American tribes and reservations that were in the area were really opposed to it. And I honestly thought it was going to fail, because I think the Senate was still controlled by the Democrats. I'm not entirely sure if it was the Senate or the House, but I think it was the Senate, because President Obama was still in. But then all of a sudden, after a $4.1 million donation by Chevron to the Democratic National Committee, the bill passed.
It's surprising how that works, isn't it?
It really is.
It's almost like there's no correlation, Huh. By somehow this group getting that much money, the bill passed. I wonder why that is. Huh. I'll have to think about that one for a while.
I know.
Yeah, I don't want to go off too topic. I want to go back to what I was saying before, but you're absolutely right, though, kind of showing how the power of money and greed and evil really finds its way in there, because that's literally what government always happens. And the founding fathers were counting on this, which is why the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was created to limit government, not us.
Right.
And I want to go back to why it is that I myself am so skeptical of government all the time. And it's not that I don't want government. That's foolish. Even the founding fathers knew that we needed to have government. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, otherwise, it would just be complete anarchy. I mean, there might have been like one or two of the founding fathers who were like all for that, but no, they got severely drowned out, and for good reasons.
Exactly.
And the reason I'm so skeptical of why someone wants to impede on a right in the name of safety is because there's a paradox of this I discovered on the internet. And while it may have been just all for jokes and fun or shits and giggles, I looked at it. I was like, you know what, this really makes you think. And the paradox was, if everyone's wearing these masks, well, here in Maryland and maybe some other states around the country, which the majority of states are not, by the way. But if we're wearing these masks, and if the masks really did work in preventing the spread of coronavirus, why aren't the stores open back up to full capacity and just requiring everyone to wear the mask? Because therefore the masks work, correct? Because that's not the case, I mean, they're still shutting places down, and they're still closing places down because it's not essential and all that. Therefore, that must mean the masks don't fully work. So why are we being required to wear them? And it really made me think too. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do some digging. So I did. I saw the back of the N95 mask. It literally says that it's not protected from COVID-19. So why are we wearing them?
I mean, I don't know.
And I even saw a video on YouTube where a guy was wearing the mask. He sneezed, and he had some sort of special camera to show the particles or whatever. It went right through it, and it went all the way around it. So it's not going to...
Yeah, and
I understand
exactly.
that it's supposed to stop the probability of it spreading, which may or may not be true, but it's not going to stop it. I mean, we're talking about an airborne virus, and it's highly contagious. You need to have one of those gas respirators or a full-on suit, to prevent yourself from
like a hazmat suit and all that, right?
Yeah, and now they're even saying it goes into the eyes. So, I mean, there is no winning with this thing. It's just a complete bogus...
I mean, but then again, if I can play devil's advocate just a little bit, I mean, I think the thing is to... Not only that, it's better than not having anything.
That's true.
Because people... and I'll be honest, some people, like you said, common sense is not common anymore. So what's someone going to do when they sneeze? Sometimes I just look at them, they go over the shoulder and shoo. They don't go into their elbow like they're supposed to. They just let the whole thing go.
Yeah, but even then,
right.
Sneezes are up to 100 miles per hour. So even if you do sneeze in your elbow, you're going all over the floor. You're going all over into the air. If you still have a mask, it's going outside of the mask. So yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's practically nothing anyway. If you sneeze, it's over. Everyone's going to be exposed to this thing. Again, 100 miles per hour. That's pretty fast. That's going to go.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if I can transition, we can transition to another thing. this is the this is still on top of everything. We have an election going on.
Yeah.
In November, and based on recent polls, it's always been around 40 something to 40 something. This is probably maybe one of the biggest spreads I've seen uh, between President Trump and Vice President Biden in where they are currently. And this is from a website called Real Clear Politics. I like them because they bind together a bunch of different polls from a bunch of different sources and then average them out, which I think is a really good thing to do because you get a lot of different opinions that way instead of just one poll's 1,000 people that they asked randomly in the state of Georgia. I don't know,
Right.
So, I like there's security in numbers, and I think this is a pretty good thing. So right now, the way they have their average is that Vice President Biden is 8 points over with a 49.6 over a 41.6 spread. And in the betting odds, this is the first time I've seen Vice President Biden over President Trump. It's been pretty squarely Biden up in the polls, but Trump up in the betting odds. This is the first time I've seen Vice President Biden up in the betting odds as well from electionbettingodds.com, by Maxim Lott and John Stossel, which I think is, they're really good at what they do. And it has President Biden, the probability of him becoming is 50.1, President Trump retaining his office at 44.8%. So I just want to get...
Seems pretty accurate. And I'll say why, because I've seen there's a movement now. And again, I didn't vote for Trump, but I do like him. I didn't vote for Obama, but I did like some things. I didn't like some things, whatever. He's still my president. I still supported him.
Well, you still live here. He's still your president.
Exactly.
There you go.
And the way I look at it is like, you know what? He's my president. Let's see where this goes. Let's keep it optimistic. Maybe he can do some good change. And he did, and he also didn't do some things I liked. Anyway, right. I've seen now there's a movement now is anyone but Trump. And so they have Biden, whether it's Hillary or she's not running anymore, but you get my point. It was just anybody but Trump, and they're really willing to have anyone else besides Trump. And so I think with that mentality, I think Biden has a pretty good chance. And I don't think Biden would be a very good candidate or a very good president, for a matter of fact. And I'm not saying, Trump is so much better. I think he's a pretty good president. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we had an incredible economy. I've even saved a lot of money on my federal tax return. State, on the other hand, really screwed me over.
Well, it's Maryland.
Yes, it is. But that aside, this Biden does not seem competent enough. And I'm not talking about Trump. Trump's a totally different subject. Just Biden, from what I've seen, he can't formulate sentences. You can't even finish his sentences. I mean, he's the amount of stuff that I've seen him, like his rationale and his logic for thought is one pretty much as real. I mean, pretty much as active as my dating life, which is non-existent. And I mean, he was even talking about like, when a home intruder comes in, just use your shotgun and shoot twice in the air. I'm like, no. This is something that I can professionally say. No, that is not true. I mean, don't do that. You'll die. And it's just a lot of things about him that one should scare a lot of people because just the rationale and logic of what he's saying does not always add up. But the fact that there is this big push now with anyone but Trump, I can see how this could be a pretty close call. Because now people already have the experience of what Trump is like, and some people are so I don't want to use the word indoctrined, but so misled about a lot of the stuff that he's been doing. They're like, oh, he's so awful. Let's do anyone but Trump.
Yeah, but you get that about anyway. You get false information about anything. And again, it goes to people just taking media for face value, not doing their own research, looking into the resources that are available to them. And that's, that's a really important thing is to know, okay, well, I heard this, so let me verify it myself. Let me find out for myself. Because I really
want to Joe. Same thing could happen to him if he became president.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the thing and the real bad thing is, like I said earlier, is that he has been undercut by his own party before he was the nomination because everyone just saw him as the weakest candidate, and then he won, and then the nomination. Now everyone's shaking hands with him, saying you're endorsed by me, and he's giving, he told Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he's like, you remind me a lot of Beau Biden. They try to go for that sentimental value. Politicians will do what they can to try to get your support and try to make themselves look good. But again, he was so thrashed by his own candidate counterparts that it doesn't look good for him, and people have been pointing it out.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't bode well for him. Though I do think this is still the Democrats' election to lose. Now I've said that since the polls came out around when the impeachment happened. This election is going to be the Democrats to lose, and I thought they were about to shoot themselves in the foot for a second time in a row. And I think really what's evened it up is that a lot of people don't like. I mean, they might agree with the things that the president says, but they don't like the attitude he's taking towards it, and the
Yeah,
tone of
granted.
voice.
I mean, even I see
Right,
some of the stuff he's done. I'm like, that's not a way a president should behave.
right,
And
right,
like,
right, right.
and like when it came to Obama, I'll give him this. I mean, Obama spoke very eloquently. He was very good at speaking. That's what a president or someone who you should look up to a president was the way. Like his mannerisms and the way he spoke and the way he was perceived by people. That was what made a pretty good president. Trump doesn't do that, but truth be told, I don't think he wants to do that because that's not who he is. That's not. That he is his own person. He likes to handle things his way, and more power to him. But there was only like one or two instances that Obama did, like with the whole mic drop. That was supposed to be kind of funny. I didn't really think it was funny, but whatever. That's just my opinion.
Right.
So,
I mean, yeah, it's like I said. People have their likes, people have their dislikes, but I do think that people want to have what they see as a more presentable person as the lead,
Yes.
as the head of state. And I think that's what's really going to send a lot of people voting for someone other than President Trump, even if the electoral college just works out as some third party candidate getting a number of electoral votes somewhere, like
Right.
even if it's just one or two from Nebraska and Maine. You never know.
Right.
Like I think one person said this in 2016 election. We like to think of this rickety system of democracy actually working in this country sometimes. And we'll see. And I think the only thing that I definitely said this to Corey last week when we were talking before our guest came on. We looked at each other and we're like, if there's one thing we're sure about this election is that it's not going to be a landslide.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's going to be close. So we're going to be up late at night. We're probably going to be live streaming the late stuff, like starting at 11. You're definitely invited to come and join us if you want. When that happens, I'll give you more info on that. But yeah, there is so much going on this year.
Truth be told, we need someone back like the 35th or the 40th president that we've had. We need someone who would put all the political bull away and realize that the political party bashing it's not going to get any better. George Washington, in his farewell address, and again I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember his exact quote, but he was saying essentially he said, "Beware of political parties because it's going to create a race for office and it's going to divide the country," and that's exactly what happened. Now we have Trump bashing Democrats, sometimes rightfully so. Now we have Democrats bashing Republicans, and sometimes rightfully so. And we really need someone to really put the kids out in timeout and say, hey, listen, the majority of Americans, which is like 70%, are tired of this stuff. We want someone who has a good, clear goal for a United States of America. And the truth be told, that's more of like what the Libertarian Party has to offer, but no one even knows they exist.
Right.
I've seen a lot of the stuff that the Libertarians post and what they stand for. I think the majority of the country would stand for what they stand for. I mean, they don't essentially, if you want to smoke weed, smoke weed. If you want to own a gun, own a gun. Have gay marriage, go for it. It's just all about civil liberties again. And I mean, some of the stuff that they're posting is, I think the majority of the country would agree with. So like you said, we do need to have someone that kind of puts the divide away because we are at an all-time high right now.
Oh, definitely. And even going back to what President Washington said, beware of political parties. Even if we add more, which I think some people think would see as a solution, having more viable options. No, because then we'll end up like great. Have you seen what is happening in the UK? Now, I've been following their politics for a while now. Their whole thing with Brexit and the recent elections and how the last basically three prime ministers who are the Tories, the Conservative Party over there, they definitely have not had the favor of most of them, but they keep on winning elections. And this last one, actually, it surprised me how much they won. They actually have a complete control of their entire parliament. The way their numbers work out is that they have to have a certain amount to be able to vote on things and not have, enough people to oppose them. They got a majority of like 57 seats above what they needed to to basically do what they want.
Mhm.
And so, it's even, and it's like I said, even though they have a bunch of extra parties, some of them are irrelevant. Some of them only gain steam certain amounts of times. One of them is the Scottish National Party, which Scotland still wants to, based on polls over there, secede from the United Kingdom. Over there. So it's very it's over there. It's a pretty broken system too. I've always said there's two jobs in this world I would never want. I don't think I ever want to be the president of the United States. You'll never make anyone happy. And I don't want to be the Speaker of the House in the UK Parliament, because if you've ever noticed, it's just dealing with a bunch of school children, because over there they don't have the look. I admire this government for the order they have in government, like where at least they stay quiet and at least they listen to each other. You can protest and sit on the floor, and you can protest and turn your back to whoever's speaking, and at the State of the Union, people make analysis videos about who stood up when and who clapped for what and how long they gave them a standing ovation for. Sure, but in the UK, it's an absolute mess. It's people, you aren't allowed to clap and you aren't allowed to laugh, evidently, but they still do it anyway. But
I would be kicked out of there in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. And it's just a bunch of people saying "here, here," but in the most annoying British pretentious way possible.
That's why we revolted.
Exactly. Look, I am I remember absolutely. It's it's just yeah, I would not want to be a British Speaker of the House, and I would do not want to be the President of the United States. I don't think it would be very good for me. So, but yeah, so
a lot faster.
Absolutely. At least it wouldn't fall out. I don't think that's not a part of my family gene. We don't fall out. So but yeah, so I mean, like I said, there's still a lot going on. One more thing about the there's a big social media push right now for the Black Lives Matter movement, and I think they're also focusing so much on, again, information and education for other people, and I think it's just what the biggest thing that you can do is, at least a lot of these celebrities are doing, a lot of African American celebrities are doing this, is that they're donating money to these awareness campaigns, saying, look, this is how we feel. This is how we feel oppressed. And this is, we want this to be known. We don't just want you to look at us and say, why is that group of people angry? That's not what, it's just looking angry isn't going to get people on your side. You got to get the information out there. I think they're doing a really good job of focusing on that, and then focusing on the economic, boycotting, I think, that is going on right now. And I think if, like I said at the beginning, if they can continue this movement for an extended period of time and make sure that they're as clear and unified in what they're fighting for, and it is the information is available for everyone to see, and it'll probably if that happens, it'll probably grow. I think that this could lead to a lot of change, but also not changes that would make the situation worse, like abolishing police, or
so that wouldn't make this worse, or that would make this worse.
That would make it worse, is what I mean. Like you also have to know where the, like I said, you have to know where to talk to people and where to compromise, because there is no way that a police department is the entire police department of the entire state, or the of the country. All the police departments are just going to go away. That's never going to end well.
Well, you'd be surprised. There's some really stupid mayors out there, and they'll just defund them. So I don't think the police would go out willingly because they want to keep their jobs. Some people like food on the table. Guilty.
Right.
But yeah, you'd be surprised if they're willing to paint Black Lives Matter on a street right next to the White House. I think, and they're also willing to defund the police. I think they'd be more than willing to go a step beyond and above. So, or above and beyond. So I wouldn't necessarily count on that. People have surprised me, and I'm not that old.
Right? Yeah. And like I said, product of the times, but also, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that would not be what would be best for everyone. That would not help, because then if there is a racist who wants to kill you, then you have no one to protect you other than yourself
and the Second Amendment.
And the Second Amendment, but still,
if you live in somewhere like Maryland or New York City, that's gone too. See,
Right, exactly.
the
Yeah.
police are very good with things like uh, I'm trying to find the word here, organized crime and things where the average civilian is not going to go take up arms and fight up against. They dedicate their time and resources to fighting this, whether it's the mob, whether it's drug trafficking, sex trafficking. You name it. The average people are not going to go, all right, baby, I'll be back. I'm going to go fight the mob tonight. Like, no, that's not something that they do. It's what the police do. So when they're gone, they're going to realize it's going to turn right back to be like the Prohibition era. Or if you wanted alcohol, you got to go to a speakeasy. You got to know all these passwords. You got to, make sure you don't piss off the Don, and all these different things. And there's going to be crime lords. There's going to be, you thought gangs were bad now? Who's going to fight the gang when there's no one to fight the gang? The gang's just going to grow. So no, getting rid of police is not a good idea. And that's just the organized crime aspect. Now you have people where if you have like a shooting all over again, where someone takes an AR or some sort of modified class 3 license, class 3 firearm and unloads at a crowd, and no one's allowed to carry, who stops them? Who finds out who the guy was? There's no forensics, there's no nothing. So yeah, that's not a good idea.
Right, exactly. And it's like I said, the biggest thing is compromise. And I know no one likes to hear compromise because they think their idea is perfect and they don't think anyone else has a reason to oppose them. But that's just not the way things are going to get done.
That's not the way the country was made either. The Constitution was founded on compromise. It originated from the Articles of Confederation that turned out to be a flop. And so they
came
back together and they're like, wow, okay, this shit sucks. I want to do this. No, I want to do this. And they compromised. And it turned out to be the Virginia, and I think the Virginia and New Jersey plan. Was that it? Virginia?
Yeah, because Virginia just wanted Congress to be completely proportional, and New Jersey wanted it to be like the Senate. So the compromise was you have two chambers of Congress. And I think
Congress and Senate. Yep.
It's probably the best way to balance the power of the states between each other.
Yeah.
And also to balance the power of the states against the federal government.
Yeah. So this country was founded on compromise, and people need to understand that, yes, like you just said, your way is not always the best way. I'm guilty of that myself. I'm only human. But I try to make myself understand that, maybe there is a better option out there. Let's keep an open mind. So.
Right. Yeah.
You're a smart man.
Yeah, you gotta, and I think, like I said this last week when we had our guest, our former history teacher, who we were talking to this about. He's an African American man. He has 2 African American sons. He's raising them in this world to be active in their, they went out on the protest in Columbia. I think it was the mall, which I think is also a good example of young people doing things, because as far as I could tell, they were students, high school students, who actually organized that protest. Did a really good job of making sure everything stayed calm. Everything was organized, that the speakers were in a good spot. And it was kind of small, but it was, small in the distance that they traveled, but it was, I think it was a good success to show, especially in such a diverse place as Columbia, where, even as diverse as it is, there are still kind of sometimes tensions and racial problems that arise here and there. Because like I said, humanity isn't perfect, but I think they did.
But at the same time, this is 2020, and those tensions that arise, I'd be very hard pressed to find that whether it's racially motivated or because someone's starting to piss someone else off and start to kind of guilt trip them. Like I started seeing people where they were forcing the cops to take the knee. Whether they were black or white, and I was like, that sort of stuff. You shouldn't know. You shouldn't have to be able to do that. If you don't want to do it, then you don't. I've also seen people where they're like guilt tripping white people into saying, "Oh, well, if you stay silent, then you're just as bad as the oppressors," and that's not true either. It's in 2020 to find things that are racist are far and few between. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm a perfect example of that. I've seen it against white people. I have no idea what it's like being a black person in 2020, so I can't speak on their behalf. So therefore, I can't say it doesn't exist. However, I can definitely say that racism exists on both sides. And you'd be amazed. There's some people I was having a conversation with on Instagram that literally said that blacks cannot be racist. And if I couldn't think of a more racist thing to say, because that's a perfect example. So again, having racially motivated things in 2020 is very far and few between, but they do exist.
I think people take racism at face value as being something that's just against someone who is a minority.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even. It's not even that.
Right, I know it's discrimination based on skin color, which is, if I've seen this because I'm a Hispanic. I say that I'm in the middle politically because really I try to be, because I don't want to commit to being completely Republican, completely Democrat. I'm unaffiliated. I'm not registered as either party. And I'm also, in being a Hispanic guy, I'm not white, but I'm not black either. And and I mentioned this last week, is that in the Hispanic community there is also, if I think the right word is colorism, where uh, um, there is some discrimination against people who are natives of the land of where they come from, like the Mayans in Guatemala, or the coastal Caribbean tribes that are in the Gulf Coast side of the Central American Isthmus.
Yeah.
And that exists. It exists, and it's based on the way people look. It's based on people's skin color. It's based on they're darker than me, or they're different than me, and they don't act the way I act, so I'm gonna automatically think less of them, and they do, and it exists. And even here I've seen Hispanic people saying, I bet if you ask a Hispanic girl, ask her, like, what would your father say if you brought an African American guy home as as a date? And I'm pretty sure 90% of them will say they would have a negative reaction, just because of the perception of what
Right.
what people have. And that's and that's the thing. There's a lot of generalizations and perceptions and prejudices within every single community, whether it be white people thinking something about black people, or black people thinking about something about white people. But also making those generalizations is what makes things worse, because you can't generalize about people. Someone might be a really terrible person, but just because they happen to be Asian doesn't mean that all Asians are like this person.
Yeah.
This is, and it just goes back to, I keep on saying this.
Kind of
but it's
like
true.
how not all bad
Yeah.
cops. I mean, not all cops are bad, because of the very, very few act of some.
Right.
Same thing goes with the protesters.
And that's exactly what I think. Like, look, again, another thing that my pastor said, he said, look, what happened should not have happened. In that, what sparked this whole conversation and situation in the the act that happened, the knee on the neck, should not have happened. It should have been, and he called out the other three cops and said, look, those other three people who were standing there, with one of them with his hand in his pocket, should have said, don't put your knee on his neck, put it somewhere else, or just try to hold him a different way.
Or literally move it up 6 inches on the square of his back.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And one of his colleagues should have said something, but what happened, and we're at this place now.
Yeah.
But that also doesn't mean that every single police officer is a pig.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely not the case. Police officers choose to go out and try to do their job.
Right.
Right. So,
I mean, the charges have actually been increased on Chauvin and the 3 officers as well.
Right.
He was originally, I think,
third degree,
manslaughter or something like that. Where it was unintentional. There was no intention of killing this guy. But truth be told, I don't really know how I feel about charging the other officers. Yeah, they could have said something. They should have said something. But it's one of those things where we're now getting into the what ifs. They did this. What if they did that? I mean, the guy was high on fentanyl, and truth be told, I mean, he also had coronary heart disease, and he had a whole bunch of other things going on for him. But truth be told, he might have died anyway, just from the whole exciting event of him having all this strenuous activity on his heart. I mean, the coroner found all this different stuff about him, where he literally could have just died from. He didn't die from asphyxiation. That's what the coroner even revealed. There was no blockage of the airway. I mean, I saw the video and it looked really, really bad. Don't get me wrong, but the coroner even showed that he didn't die from asphyxiation. He died from the drug overdose. He died from having this heart disease. He died from all this stuff, and the neck certainly did not help. And it may have accelerated his drug effects, which I get. But having all the officers charged as if they were intentionally trying to kill this guy, no, I don't think that's right.
I think they charged them with I don't know, like, I don't know if it's like a police specific charge where it said, I don't know exactly what the charge was. I don't think that I have no idea what the other charges are.
Well, they upped it. They changed it. It was Chauvin. It was originally 3rd degree manslaughter, and now they did, I think, murder 2 now.
It's 2. Yeah, it's 2.
Yeah, and now they charged the other 3 with something that was pretty darn close. And I'm just like, I don't think that's true. I mean, I don't think that's fair, because while they're trying to get this guy, they're all now worried about everyone else around filming them and getting close to them. I don't think that every single one of the cops saw that he had a knee on his neck. So why is all of these cops guilty of this? And I don't know. It just seems very iffy. I've never put a knee on anyone's neck when I've detained them, so I'm not justifying the action of Chauvin. I think he's definitely guilty. But it's like, it's a very hard comparison because now it's like, well, they should have done this. Well, I mean, you could just say that about anything. Well, they should have, gave him an ice cream sundae too and make sure he was really comfortable. I mean, the list goes on of things that they could have, should have, would have. I think it's a little bit too much to charge them for things like, the things would have been differently if this happened. Plus, you weren't even in their shoes. You have no idea what it's like detaining a guy who's 6 foot and 200 pounds high on drugs. I've personally had to see that in real life, and I didn't even have a gun on me, so that was a totally different scenario. And I totally, yeah. So, the whole they should have, could have, would have done this better. The only thing that was at stake there was the guy's knee on the neck, and they really should have, could have, and would have told him to move it. And that's about it. But then charging him as if they actually did the crime, no.
I think it was just it might be something where they are trying to get where they thought if this happens, then maybe it'll get the people to stop destroying things. Stop getting people to protest, which causes other people to come out and start destroying things. I think that's probably what the politician had in their mindset. Because let's still be honest here, a lot of these people are still politicians, and what is the thing they want to do? They want to make sure that their constituency is going to reelect them if that's what they're up for. So that could have been. I hate to say it because I want to believe that there probably is a better intention than that in some people, but there's got to be someone who said, look, if we do this, it'll stop this.
Oh, actually, you know what? That reminded me. I think I remember why they did Murder 2. I was watching this video, and the reason they brought it on Murder 2 is because you have to prove that it was intentional killing, and they knew that the jury would not vote for that. They knew that they were going to strike it down. So I think he's going to get away innocent.
Which would cause another wave of of unrest and
I don't know if I don't know if they were trying to make it to where they're going to get this guy off the hook or they're doing something, but they should have stuck with Murder 3 because that was the perfect ideal setup. I mean, that was the guy unintentionally killed the guy. He would have done jail time, but now he might not serve any at all because they're doing Murder 2.
Yeah, I know
But I'm gonna leave you with that because I do have to go in a couple seconds.
Right. No, perfectly fine. Again, thank you very much. And I think we filled in our usual spot is just about an hour, so we're right about perfect ended. So, any final thoughts you want to give to the people watching around the internet?
I didn't think of anything to close with, but I think just keeping an open mind and understanding that there's probably more to play than what we're being told and shown shows a lot more to say as you as a person. And I'll say this: when I was in Baltimore working a couple of days ago, and we were there to make sure that none of the rioters came to the businesses that we were protecting, there was multiple people that came up to me, and thank God, good people still exist. Because you turn on the TV and there's just riots and chaos and people hating each other and division and racism, and then you go outside to real life and you realize, oh wow, that's not even remotely the close the case even outside. You talk to people and they're perfectly fine. So these there was one black lady came up to me, told me she got her HQL, she saw my gun, and we had this whole conversation about what's going on and all this different stuff. And so I think people were starting to begin to realize that just how bad it is on TV, because it's not really about the truth anymore. It's not like what it was during the space race or anything like that. Now whatever is hot, this sells. There's money. If there's racism, people get triggered over this, and so they want to watch it. So I think I commend those that really want to keep an open mind and being open to be able to talk to people about different things, especially something as sensitive as racism. So
right, yeah. So yeah, and I guess I would echo that, just saying that also not only keep an open mind, but also be willing to have a conversation with someone, and even if you disagree, be willing to respect them because there's still a person who's entitled to their opinions. And to everyone who's watching, know your rights and know what you're able to do and what not to do. So just, keep everything in mind, keep your eyes open, make sure, if anything happens, just make sure what's going on around you, and make sure you look for things for yourself, and don't just take everything at face value, especially if the media gives it to you, because they're, like you said, they're probably doing some sensationalism in there. But yeah. So do your research about everything you want. and just make sure you know what you are allowed to do when you want to do it. So
All right.
I will leave you with that. Thank you again, Grant, for joining us. And
course.
this has been We Talk Politics.
All right. See you later.
See ya.